All right, so for today's session, we're really going to put on our detective hats. We're doing a deep forensic analysis of a few key verses from the Quran's 28th chapter, Al-Qasas. What's so interesting is that the text itself basically presents a puzzle about its own origins, and we're going to follow the clues it lays out and just see where they take us.
Our whole investigation really kicks off right here with this one fascinating verse. You see, the text is telling the story of Moses with all this incredible detail, but then it does something pretty unusual. It turns and speaks directly to the Prophet Muhammad and says, point blank, you were not there. Now, this isn't just some casual comment. This is clue number one, a major clue that the text itself wants us to notice and follow.
So this leads us to the very first part of the argument the text is building. It's establishing an alibi. Before you can figure out where this knowledge did come from, the scripture first makes this really powerful case for where it didn't come from. It goes through systematically and shows that the prophet couldn't possibly have known any of these details through normal, everyday human experience. And the text builds this case with such methodical precision. You see it across these three verses. Verse 44 says he wasn't on the western side of Mount Sinai. Okay. Then verse 45 says he never lived among the people of Midian. And then verse 46 says he wasn't at the side of the mount when God called to Moses. It's just this airtight alibi, right? It's designed to completely eliminate any possibility that he was an eyewitness. And this brings us right to the core question the text is basically forcing us to ask. If he wasn't there to see it for himself, and he didn't learn about it from the people who were there, then how on earth does he know all this? The text has just locked every single conventional door, leaving us with a genuine mystery to solve. To even begin to answer that, we have to move on to the next phase of our analysis. We're going to deconstruct the specific language, the very words being used in these verses. Because, according to our source material, the choice of words here is absolutely deliberate and, frankly, crucial to the entire argument. And this right here is the primary evidence we're examining, a really detailed, scholarly commentary on these verses. We're going straight to the source to get a handle on all these linguistic details. Okay, so let's zoom in on a really key piece of linguistic evidence. The verse uses this word ash-shahidin, which translates to the witnesses. But according to the source, this doesn't just mean a casual bystander. No, it implies being an active observer, someone who is right there, present, watching, and fully understanding the event as it happens. So the text isn't just saying you were in a different city, it's making a much, much stronger claim. You were not part of the group that was actively witnessing this. So you can see how the case is being built, right? It's all about elimination. The possibility of direct observation? Denied. What about learning it through living with the people of Madyan? Denied. Okay, how about hearing it from other witnesses who were there? Also denied. The text is forensically sealing off every possible, normal channel of human knowledge. So by systematically eliminating all of those other possibilities, the source argues that the text leaves only one single explanation on the table. The knowledge itself becomes the miracle, and it points directly to its origin, divine revelation, or what's known as wahi. So let's just break down the logical sequence that the source presents. It goes like this. 1. The prophet is narrating incredibly detailed history. 2. The text itself confirms, point blank, that he wasn't there. 3. Historical context shows us he had no conventional way of learning these stories from books or teachers. So what's the only conclusion left? The information must have come from outside the normal human chain of knowledge. And this right here is the absolute core of the argument. This knowledge of the unseen, or gaib, isn't just a part of the message. The argument is that the knowledge is the proof. The very fact that this information exists in this text delivered by this specific person, that is presented as the primary evidence that the entire message is divine. Now, the source document doesn't just stop there. It actually widens the lens to show us that this isn't some isolated case. This pattern of a prophet receiving detailed knowledge of past events they couldn't have witnessed is actually a recurring theme. It's a consistent piece of corroborating evidence that you can find throughout the Quran. Yeah, the source points out this isn't some one-off argument. It's a clear pattern. We see it here with Moses on the Mount. We see it again with the story of Mary, where the text says something very similar, like, you were not with them. And then you see it again in the story of Joseph's brothers, and it's followed by that same kind of reminder, you weren't there. It's a definite recurring theme. And again, we can trace this whole comparative analysis right back to our source text. The argument that's being made is that this pattern isn't an accident. It's a deliberate, structural piece of evidence built into the text. What was really interesting is that after narrating these events from the past, the Quran often uses this sort of textual signature.
It concludes with a phrase just like this one. That is from the news of the unseen, which we reveal to you. It's almost like it's putting an evidence tag on the story, explicitly framing what you just heard as the proof of revelation. This all brings us to the final and maybe the most profound piece of the whole analysis. The source makes a really critical distinction between different types of miracles, specifically the difference between a physical miracle and an intellectual one. And this comparison is absolutely key. Think about it. The miracles of past prophets, like Moses' staff turning into a serpent, those were physical, sensory events. You had to be there right then to see it. So their proof is limited by time and place, and it relies on historical testimony. But the Quran is presented as a miracle for the intellect. Its proof isn't a physical event. It's the internal evidence in the text itself, like the knowledge of the unseen we've been looking at. And that makes it universal and accessible to anyone, at any time. So the final argument here is a powerful one. Those past miracles were tied to a specific time and place. You had to be there. But this type of miracle, the intellectual one, is timeless. The text itself becomes the evidence. And it's basically inviting anyone in any generation to conduct their own forensic analysis and answer that same fundamental question. If this knowledge isn't from a divine source, then where did it come from? And so we end right here with the central question this whole analysis raises. How can a text be both the revelation and its own proof? The argument we've just walked through presents the Quran not just as a message to be followed, but as a self-contained piece of evidence, a historical event that also claims to hold a timeless, rational miracle within its very pages. And that's really the essential takeaway from our forensic analysis.